टुडे आई शैल टॉक अबाउट सेरेब्रल पैल्सी। पीजी एग्जाम के लिए तो ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है ही, पर साथ में प्रैक्टिसिंग पीडियाट्रिशियंस के लिए टू इट इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट because a number of cases present to the OPD as well. So what is cerebral palsy? Actually the definition is relatively big and has a number of components, so residents अक्सर रटने के चक्कर में they don't really get the meaning. This definition has basically 4 parts. सबसे पहली चीज़ तो ये इट इज़ अ डिसऑर्डर ऑफ मूवमेंट एंड पोस्चर, मतलब मोटर डिसऑर्डर है, कोई सेंसरी इन्वॉल्वमेंट, सेंसरी डिसऑर्डर पर से या ऑटोनॉमिक डिसऑर्डर पर से नहीं है. इट कैन बी एसोसिएटेड बट एक्चुअली इट इज़ अ डिसऑर्डर ऑफ मोटर system, motor component, and there is a difficulty in performing motor activity. So there is limitation of activity. Second thing is that it is a permanent disorder. It persists for lifelong. The third feature is that it is a non-progressive etiology. That is, whatever injury or whatever damage occurs to the brain has occurred only once. It does not keep progressing like in neurodegenerative or in neuromuscular diseases. And the last point is that it occurs in developing or the immature brain. अब ये developing और immature brain जो injure हो चुका है, ये further जैसे जैसे develop होगा वैसे वैसे clinical presentation या clinical features change होते रहेंगे, लेकिन this does not mean that the pathology itself is progressing like in neurodegenerative disorders. So ultimately it is the neuromotor impairment. The residents get very confused that etiology is progressive या clinical features are progressive. So etiology is not progressive and clinical features are variable as the injured brain also develops. The second confusion is that people think that every case of CP will have some amount of intellectual disability or developmental delay, जो कि बिल्कुल ज़रूरी नहीं है. But yes, because motor component affected है, तो gross motor या fine motor delay usually होता है, और कोमॉर्बिडिटीज लाइक विजन एंड हियरिंग इम्पेयरमेंट अगर होती है यूजुअली, तो लैंग्वेज डिले एंड अल्टीमेटली सोशल अडेप्टिव माइलस्टोन्स में भी डिले हो सकता है. बट देयर इज नो हार्ड एंड फास्ट रूल दैट ऑल माइलस्टोन्स विल डेफिनेटली बी डिलेड. In some hospitals, I've seen residents invariably using the term loosely CPMR. CPMR का केस है. MR मतलब mental retardation is वैसे not to be used. It is not to be used now. It has been replaced by the term intellectual disability, and the difference between developmental delay, intellectual disability, etc. you can see in another video of mine on developmental milestones, the link of which I'll share in the description box below. So अगर हम etiology देखें, then we find that there are 3 broad categories. The first category, which is said to be the most responsible for the majority of cases of cerebral palsy, is the antenatal category, in which the causes can be maternal or fetal. Maternal causes are like poor nutritional or socioeconomic status, intrauterine infections, chorioamnionitis, maternal diseases like diabetes, hypertension, pregnancy-induced hypertension, drugs and or radiation exposure. In fetal causes, prematurity is a very important cause, very, very important cause. Then intrauterine infections, multiple gestations, pregnancy-related complications, and non-reassuring cardiotocography. The second broad category of causes is perinatal asphyxia, in which birth asphyxia is the most important causes. The other 2 causes like prolonged obstructed labor and difficult delivery invariably lead to birth asphyxia. And IVH also, because it occurs, the premature babies are very prone to develop intraventricular hemorrhage. The third broad category is postnatal metabolic disturbances, for example, hypoglycemia, head injury, or developmental brain malformations. I've seen a few cases. Then CNS infections, especially encephalitis, like post-encephalitic sequelae also leads to some kind of CP. You must have seen patients with post-encephalitic sequelae. Again, it is a kind of acquired or postnatal CP. Then hyperbilirubinemia and post-cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Now, when it comes on to pathogenesis, you must understand that if the injury or asphyxia is prolonged, then the superficial, remember, the brain has 2 layers mainly. First is the cortex, which is shown in the brown color, and second is the part which is present below the cortex, which is referred to as the subcortical structures. Usually they are seen in blue green, and they usually comprised of basal ganglia, hypothalamus, etc. So if there is prolonged asphyxia, then the injury is first occurs to the cortical area and also occurs to the subcortical area. So there is basically global CNS damage. But if there is an acute asphyxia, then mainly the brainstem, thalamus, and basal ganglia, that is the subcortical regions, are involved, usually sparing the cortex. See, this is very important. What happens is that in acute asphyxia, the diving reflex, which is responsible for diverting the blood flow from muscle, viscera, and skin to the more vital organs of the body like heart, lungs, and brain, in order to maintain the perfusion of these organs during periods of acute asphyxia occurs. But this diving reflex or any kind of cerebral autoregulation fails if the asphyxia period is prolonged for a longer duration. So now you understand, in acute total asphyxia, the subcortical structures are involved but the cortex is spared because of the diving reflex, diversion of flow from other areas to the brain, the cortex. But if the asphyxia is prolonged, then cerebral autoregulation fails and global CNS damage occurs. So in most of the cases of cerebral palsy, what happens is that there is a partial prolonged asphyxia followed by an acute total asphyxia. So ultimately, the entire brain is damaged to quite an extent. Now, when we see the pathology, we find four common histological features. First is the selective neuronal necrosis, मतलब जगह जगह पे diffusely अलग अलग जगह पे neuron selectively involve हो रहे हैं. So the location can be in the cortex or in the subcortex, and clinical features will be because of cortex like altered sensorium seizures, etc., and subcortex like hypotonia, abnormal movements, etc. Then focal ischemic necrosis. In focal ischemic necrosis, focal usually applies that usually one half of the brain is involved. And ischemic definitely means that the vascular territory is involved. The most commonly involved vascular territory is middle cerebral artery. So the clinical presentation is usually that of spastic hemiplegia and unilateral focal neurological deficits and focal seizures. I guess everyone knows the meaning of difference between plegia and paresis. Plegia is complete paralysis, that is approximately power is 1 by 5, and paresis is power more than 1 by 5, that is partial paralysis. If some power is definitely present in the limbs. Then third is the periventricular injury. Periventricular injury में क्या होता है, corticospinal tracts, they are present near the ventricles. This periventricular injury is very common in preterm uh, kids, preterm babies. And you see, this is the motor homunculus. For motor homunculus, I know everyone must have read in the physiology anatomy days that the legs are represented and the hands are represented in different parts of the brain. In periventricular injury, therefore, especially the lower limbs are involved, and that is why it leads to spastic diplegia or diparesis, that is lower limbs in being involved more than upper limbs. And in parasagittal injury, the parasagittal cortical and subcortical regions are involved, and it leads to spastic quadriparesis with upper limbs being involved more than the lower limbs usually. But there is no hard and fast rule. Clinically, when we classify cerebral palsy, there is a lot of confusion between different terms, and people have been using different terms differently. But majorly, the major kind of one major kind of broad clinical presentation of cerebral palsy is spastic when the tone is increased. It can either be hemiparesis, double hemiparesis. Double hemiparesis is both halves of the body being involved, but one half being involved more than the power of one half of the body more being more less than, मतलब lesser than the other half of the body. Then diparesis, in which the upper limbs being more than lower limbs, and quadriparesis with all four limbs being involved. So the location of injury is usually the cortex. Then dyskinetic CP, which can be ethetoid, chorioethetoid, or dystonic. Again, the location of injury is subcortex, basal ganglia, thalamus, etc. Then there is ataxic CP, sometimes which is also referred to as hypotonic CP. Here the location of injury is cerebellum. Some people also use the term dyskinetic when the injury is located in cerebellum, but this primarily depends upon the clinical presentation of the child. And finally, there is the mixed CP, in which the location of injury is not specified to any particular region. It is diffuse kind of injury and has features of all the above three types of cerebral palsy. Then there are certain non-motor clinical manifestations also. जो cerebral palsy में जो injury हुई है, that is leads to motor problem, but some non-motor clinical manifestations can also be present in these children, and these include cognitive impairment, which can lead to global developmental delay or intellectual disability. As we may see that GDD is a term used usually in less than 5 years, and intellectual disability more than 5 years of age. The details I'll share in the link below. Then behavioral issues, then epilepsy, which is usually generalized, then speech and language problems, not which are basically due to peripheral causes like oromotor dysfunction and pseudobulbar palsy, then sensory impairment, which include vision and hearing deficits, gastrointestinal problems like GER and constipation, then feeding problems and nutrient deficiencies, and ultimately pain, chronic muscle spasm, orthopedic complications, undetected dental problems, constipation. So these children are never at ease. Almost, you see that these children are usually not at ease. Then this is very important for the residents because some examiners have become very interested in asking about all these functional classification systems. Like in an earlier scene, we had seen that this cerebral palsy causes limitation in activity. So the limitation of the function of the body. So we have classified the severity of cerebral palsy depending on the functional classification system. So if we want to assess the severity of CP depending on the gross motor activity of the child, then it is referred to as gross motor functional classification system. For example, this, in which the child walks with limitations, is the least severe category, and ultimately it leads to severely restricted self mobility in ascending order, which is the category 5. Second is the manual ability functional classification system, which is used to classify the fine motor activities, the classify the severity of CP depending on the fine motor activity of the child, and it includes handling of the objects. And third is the CFCS or communication functional classification system, which basically depends upon the other sensory modalities of the child being affected, like vision and hearing. And in CFCS, again, the communication is assessed by sending and receiving with familiar or with unfamiliar or familiar partners. So ultimately, we see that they have each of these types of classification systems have 5 levels with progressive disability in ascending order. Now, this is an example of GMFCS. I think the postgraduate residents must know this because it is often some CP is a common case in many medical colleges, and these examiners are interested sometimes in asking this. Now, coming on to the diagnosis of cerebral palsy is clinical, and it is not mandatory that you get some identification of the cause of CP for making a diagnosis of CP. We see that it is a motor disorder causing limitation in the activity of the child. So you can make it clinically, but if you want to identify the etiology, which is all, of course, very important for treating and prognosticating treating the child and prognosticating the parents, then of course you have to identify the etiology. The diagnosis is difficult in less than 2 years of age because less than 2 years of age the brain is developing fast. So even if injury has occurred, the injured part of the brain and the surrounding part also keeps developing, and the clinical phenotype keeps changing rapidly. So some pediatricians use the term probable CP before the age of 2 years and definite CP only after the age of 5 years when the brain has matured quite much. Then coming on to investigations for understanding the etiology of CP, the most important investigation is neuroimaging, in which the MRI brain can detect the brain injury usually 7 to 10 days after the insult, and diffusion weighted imaging can detect earlier within hours of a hypoxic ischemic insult. Then along with this, you have to get fundus and vision testing done in every child with cerebral palsy. Also hearing impairment, that is BERA, needs to be done in these children. If you have not been able to decipher a proper cause of cerebral palsy by a good clinical history and examination, and also by neuroimaging, if you have ruled out other causes, then you can definitely go for metabolic workup. If there is especially history of intermittent episodes of deterioration, Then genetic workup if there is a suggestive family history or presence of developmental malformation. I've seen a few cases with developmental malformation, but it is usually revealed in neuroimaging also. Then stroke. Now remember that this focal ischemic necrosis which we had seen in the earlier scene. It is actually the necrosis due to vascular ischemia. So it is a kind of stroke basically, antenatal or perinatal event. And in such cases, when other things have been ruled out, you can go for anticoagulant procoagulant screening and coagulation profile. Now coming on to the treatment. In this, the most important term is multidisciplinary. See, all examiners are very, very interested in listening to this term that the treatment of cerebral palsy is multidisciplinary. Like it involves the pediatricians, the neurologists, the surgeons, the ENT specialists, the ophthalmologists, the physiotherapists, the dietitians, and a host of other people to completely holistically orthopedic people to holistically manage a child with cerebral palsy. So multidisciplinary is the first term which you must use when it comes on to the treatment of cerebral palsy. Then the medical management includes management of seizures, spasticity, abnormal motor movements, and drooling of saliva, etc., feeding difficulties and all. Then surgical management includes reconstructive surgery or corrective surgery and a special kind of surgery, selective dorsal rhizotomy. Then physiotherapy is very, very important. You must encourage the movement which is as normal as possible, maintaining correct positioning and activities of daily living and reducing inappropriate postures. Then feeding management is very, very important because these children usually, the parents, they are so depressed and they are so tired after taking care of these children, they don't actually pay attention to the nutrition of the child. Like I've seen 5 or 6 years old children with CP on bottle feed only. So feeding management is very important. The use of shallow spoons, soft textured food, small pieces of solids, and special techniques, for example, placing food in the middle of tongue and rubbing the gums before meals for perioral desensitization. Then routine immunization is a must. Then speech therapy and hearing aids are to be started at a very earlier age. So the screening for hearing is very important. And parental counseling is very, very important along with the formation of support groups. So I guess I have been able to do some justice to making the topic understandable. Thank you and have a very good day.